Let's bring in Karen Greenberg. She's the director of national security at Fordham Law. She's the author of the new book, Subtle Tools, The Dismantling of American Democracy from the War on Terror to Donald Trump. My colleague Hallie Jackson is at the Pentagon alongside Ad Gearin, a Washington Post correspondent and the MSNBC contributor. And our very own Jeff Bennett is in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Let's get this conversation underway. Karen, we just had some interesting conversations with Andy Card, with Lawrence Wright and Ali Soufan. And one of the things that I want to know whether it's the same or different than when it was when these attacks took place. Afghanistan, like other countries, was a place in which bad actors who wanted to do bad things to America could train and base themselves with impunity. That's not all gone away. Not only is Afghanistan going to become another one of those places, but we've still got Libya, we've still got Yemen, we've still got Somalia, we've still got Iraq in some cases, and we don't know what's going on in Lebanon with their government, and Syria is an uncertain place. Where there are not strong governments, there is a role for strong non-government actors who want to do bad things.
That's right. And one of the lessons from 9/11 and from what we've seen over the past 20 years is that how you go about protecting these areas really matters. And there were, to Jane Harman's point, there were many mistakes that we made along the way. And we can't repeat them again. And one of them was, what does it mean to be at perpetual war? And another one of them is, what does it mean to only fight with weapons and not with really addressing what is going on the ground? Why are these fragile states? There are 82.5 million displaced persons in the world right now, many of them in the greater Middle East, many of them children. They need care. They need attention, and this is rife for terrorist recruitment. So we need new tools to address terrorism going forward, and this is a good moment to start thinking about it in constructive ways.
Karen, what President Bush was basically saying was, you can attack us, but you cannot scare us, and you cannot change who we are as a country. In hindsight, what do you think about that message?
You know, I use that quote as sort of the beginning point of my book, which is that I think America really lost much of its soul in the way it responded to 9/11. We did a lot of good things, routing out the terrorist havens, and in Afghanistan in the fall of 2001 was successful. Many of the things we did at home to protect ourselves with the transportation security, TSA, was also good. But we panicked. And we went way too far in many ways. We tortured people. We created Guantanamo. We used warrantless surveillance on on the masses of Americans. We used drone warfare in a sort of untethered way that affected civilians. These are things we didn't need to do. We should trust our rigorous, professional, limited, precise use of force. And we shouldn't have had to reach for the world to do that, and we did. And so I think, the words of the president are very important to say, let's reflect, let's think, and next time, let's react in a way that we can still respect who we are, and we'll still be safe.
Hallie?
I'm here with Ann Gearin, of course, from the Washington Post, one of our contributors here at MSNBC. And I think you were able to hear the end of that conversation with Karen. I know we had some technical issues. And I want to talk about what we heard from President Biden just before that. Ali Velshi rightfully noted that we dipped in. We did a little interruption, which we don't always love to do. But President Biden was addressing specifically Afghanistan to our colleagues who cover the White House, your colleagues as well, who are there traveling with him in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. You are somebody who has covered this president and this man before he was president as senator for a long time. He obviously has had an evolution on his thinking as it relates to Afghanistan. Walk through that.
He has. I mean, he started out as a strong supporter of all of the actions taken in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 to invade Afghanistan along with allies to try to rout out the al-Qaeda cell that was there. And he remained a supporter of that strategy for several years. He also voted to authorize the use of force in Iraq. He came to regret both of those decisions. And by the time he was vice president, in the middle of that experience, when there was a troop surge in Afghanistan, he was arguing not fully against it, but that it needed to be smaller, it needed to be controlled, and that Obama was getting, in Obama's own words later, rolled by the generals.
And when you look at the messaging that he is delivering now after the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, one thing we've talked about, Anna, is the building is right behind us here. We've talked about what a big building it is. We've talked about how meaningful this day is to so many who work there and who were working there on September 11th, and how emotional it is for some of them, right?
Yeah.
Less than a month now, just weeks after the withdrawal of troops, and now marking the anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah, I was working here during the surge, and the memories of 9/11 were 10 years more fresh than they are now. Many people I knew then had either been in the Pentagon on the day it was hit and then served in Afghanistan, or had entered service because of what happened in Afghanistan. It was a searing moment for the people who worked here, and it was something that forever affected the military and U.S. government from their forth.
Ken Guerin, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Steph, I'll turn it back to you and Allie.
Jeff?
Yeah, a question for Karen Greenberg. I'm sort of focused on the threat posed from within, the threat posed by far-right domestic extremists. We all saw what happened tragically at the Capitol on January 6th. There is another rally scheduled for next Saturday, in fact, a so-called Justice for J6 rally, both at the U.S. Capitol and about 13 state capitals all around the country, where you have people coming out in support of the insurrectionists. What is the sort of persistent, palpable domestic terror threat as you see it? And is this country, have we fully understood it, and are we fully prepared to deal with it?
I don't know that we fully understand it, but we are prepared to deal with it. And one of the lessons from 9/11 that speaks directly to this is that we have laws. We have laws in place that can that already criminalize much of what happened at the Capitol. We have to use them. And we have to use them in a strong and effective and evidence-based way. And so it may take some time. It may take some time to just link the evidence to the actors and to, complete the picture. But I have no worries that that's not going to happen. And it's one of the lessons from 9/11. We have to trust our laws. Ground zero, which, is used as an expression of a nuclear explosion, just like, the President Bush said, it destroyed buildings. It destroyed our confidence. It didn't destroy our values.
Karen, earlier today, former President George W. Bush talked about domestic terrorism and actually drew parallels to what we're seeing here to al-Qaeda. Let's share a little bit of that.
We have seen growing evidence that the dangers to our country can come not only across borders, but from violence that gathers within. There is little cultural overlap between violent extremists abroad and violent extremists at home. But in their disdain for pluralism, in their disregard for human life, in their determination to defile national symbols, they are children of the same foul spirit, and it is our continuing duty to confront them.
How significant is that?
Well, I think it's immensely significant for people who are going to write the histories of the beginning and end of this period of time. I do want to say something. In a way, It
sounds like we have a helicopter landing on top of us, but we don't.
It does.
It's passing.
Yeah,
There's 7 helicopters flying directly above
my God.
us right now. It's the same 7 that were heading north along the Hudson River. They've now moved inland over Manhattan. I mean, it looks like 7 helicopters, right? I might have even lost count. 7 helicopters have just flown south of us again, going back to where they came. Sorry for the interruption.
Let me tell you why that is an incredibly important thing he said. The 9/11 era is over. this period of time that started on 9/11, and we've been waiting for an endpoint. We've pulled out of Afghanistan. We're rethinking other things. And that statement, which was that we now have to basically turn our attention to domestic terrorists at home, it's a different kind of attention. It requires different kinds of intelligence collection, different kind of criminal authorities, law enforcement authorities.
Which we do not possess at the moment. We don't necessarily possess the right criminal authorities and laws to go after some of these domestic terrorists.
I'm not so sure. We could probably have a debate about that, and that's a longer forum. We have an incredible amount. Let's see them use them. Look at the limited number of charges that have been used so far.
But how much more complicated is it, right? We looked at America come together as one nation because it was a foreign adversary. Because this is coming from within, we have many political leaders that continue to downplay the acts and intentions of January 6th.
This is a problem. We need to have much better public education. And I don't mean public education like just schooling. I mean schooling the nation. We also need it to be, and this is the hard part, we need to figure out a way to get citizens to trust what they hear, to trust what they hear from their government. This idea that was spawned in part by the 9/11, post-9/11 era, which is that so much was secrecy, so much was held largely on national security grounds and more. We need to sort of convince people that transparency is a value, and that they can trust certain places to go.
But they do trust what they hear.
Yeah.
They just don't necessarily trust the government. They don't necessarily trust credible news sources, and we're living in the age of misinformation.
That's right. And we need to up our game in terms of understanding how to get civilians to be more educated about what misinformation is, and starting with children in schools and really being able to do that. And also, look, there's been movement, not enough, towards how to handle social media and things like that. It's a road ahead, but the 9/11 era is behind us, and the new era of new threats is ahead of us.
Interesting that you're optimistic.